With the legalization of marijuana fast approaching, a remarkable shift has taken place. Pot has gone from black market to stock market as companies are raising money and jockeying for position to supply what's expected to be robust demand. Joining us now for a look at the business side of legalization, Mitchell Osak. He is Managing Director of Strategic Advisory Services at the accounting firm Grant Thornton. And Simon Romano, partner in the capital markets and mergers and acquisition groups at the law firm Stikeman Elliott LLP. Gentlemen, good to have you both here at TVO tonight. How long have you been a lawyer?
1989.
1989, so a long time. Did you ever imagine that you would be doing mergers and acquisitions in the cannabis sector?
Probably not until the last year or so, but I've done mergers and acquisitions in many, many sectors.
But not this sector.
Not this sector. Well, yes, this sector, just one recently.
But I mean, not
over a long period of time.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, is there a certain part of you that finds the whole thing fantastic?
To me, it's like one of those things that happens like .com, like Bitcoin, big flash, lots of excitement, a ton of people make a lot of money, maybe a larger or smaller ton of people lose a lot of money. It's one of those things that happen.
Gotcha. So, Mitchell, what do you do?
I'm a Managing Director of Strategic Advisory Services at Grant Thornton. In other words, I'm a consultant.
In the cannabis sector?
We do a lot of work in the cannabis sector, yes.
So this job of yours kind of didn't exist 3 years ago in this sector.
That's correct.
It's all new.
It is new. The legal part of the business is new. The illegal part has been around for thousands of years.
You haven't been consulting on that?
No, not at all. I'm not that old.
Do you see Canada becoming a leader in the cannabis sector worldwide?
I don't see Canada becoming a leader. I see Canada as a leader right now.
It already is?
Yes, absolutely.
Explain.
Well, we are the first G20 country to legalize recreational marijuana. And right now, if there is such a thing as best practices in the industry, we are those best practices. And I'm proud to be a part of that.
You've obviously consulted in myriad other sectors of the economy, but this one's new. Is it different?
It's different and it's not new. Cannabis consumption has been going on for thousands of years.
But your role in it would be new.
Our role is absolutely new. What's very interesting and the way we look at it is, much like the .coms and Bitcoin, we're witnessing an emergence of a birth of a new industry based on old habits, and that's exciting.
Do you have a sense yet, Simon, about who's going to make money in this? You just sort of joked a second ago, some people make money, some will lose money. Who's going to be making money in this?
I was referring to investors then, but now I think you're talking about companies.
Talking about companies, sectors?
Yeah. I don't think so yet. Really, nobody has any sales yet or modest sales. Nobody's making money yet. They're all suffering losses for the most part. So, and I'm, looking at my tomato plants in my, it's actually hard to grow stuff. To grow stuff that doesn't have fungus on it, that need, those kinds of, it's agriculture, right?
Right,
agriculture,
so if farmers get it right.
Indoor farming, but they have problems and bugs come, and so it's going to be very interesting as to who makes money and who doesn't and how much they make. It's going to be very interesting.
I mean, is it a slam dunk that government's going to make a fortune on this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you take anywhere $6 billion, $10 billion. It's really kind of illegal, so who knows? But you take that revenue base and you plunk it into the capital markets and say, "Have fun, fellas." That's really what we're seeing right now, and everyone's guessing and hoping and not wanting to miss out.
Take us through the sort of supply chain in this new emerging business. How does it all work? How does the money get made? What happens?
That's a fantastic question. I don't think we know where the money's going to be made yet. Based on the work that we've done with more than a dozen licensed producers, we have certain ideas. But the supply chain essentially starts with a seed and soil and water and controlled growing conditions. And eventually, hopefully on July 1, it'll end up in a store, online or physical retail store.
Well, we know it won't. July 1, we know it's going to be delayed.
Correct. Yeah. But nonetheless, it still will get to a store and get to a consumer sometime right after that. And there will be a very sophisticated supply chain backing that up. That'll be highly regulated, highly secure, with a significant amount of government involvement. So it is a complex industry, even though the product is well known and has a high degree of penetration among consumer groups.
There are stocks being traded, obviously, already, right, in the cannabis market?
A lot, yeah.
A lot. Do they trade on, well, which exchanges do they trade on?
They trade on the Toronto Stock Exchange, some of them. The TSX has had some trepidation about trading stocks that have U.S. activities. People who are thinking about that tend to migrate to the Canadian Securities Exchange's CSE. So those are the two markets that they're really trading on.
And in the States?
No.
No. So we really are at the forefront of this.
Yeah.
Do you think that's cool?
I mean, in the States, you can't, it's a cash business. You can't use federal banking services. So people walk around with suitcases filled with money. That's happening in the States. You can't go across state lines. So it's very, very rigid and federally illegal and state-wise legal in some states.
Are there Canadian companies doing business in the States?
There are some Canadian companies with U.S. operations, yeah.
How are they doing?
Well, again, we're not talking about revenue or profit because that's still to come. But in terms of market capitalization and exciting stock performances, subject to some recent downturns, they've been doing very well. So investors, mainly retail investors, but also institutions, are wanting to have a piece of this, and they sometimes spread their money around, not knowing which will be successful, so I'll invest in several.
Now, for almost 100 years, when you talked auto industry and you talk big three, it's GM, Ford, and Chrysler.
Yeah.
Do we have a big three in the cannabis business yet?
We do, I would say. We have Canopy, whose trading symbol is weed. That's the best symbol, I think. And then we have Aurora and we have Afria. They're the big three by market cap right now. Can you
put a number on the market cap? What do you think it's worth?
No, it's in the billions. I don't have a number at my hand.
It's already in the billions.
Mm-hmm. Well, each of those companies is in the billions.
Each one?
So you add them together, they're in the tens of billions. Yeah.
Right. What is the sort of state of this sector in terms of its maturity at this stage of the game?
I would say it's approaching maturity, depending on how you define maturity. These are legal entities. Many of them are growing right now. Many of them are growing quite rapidly, selling medical cannabis, and they're rapidly evolving their business models to start to productize their recreational cannabis and creating brands around them and strategic alliances with other firms. So when we talk about the birth of an industry, we are literally seeing it. What might take a consumer products value chain 5 years, we're seeing that evolve in about 1 to 2 years. Right
in
now.
1 to 2 years.
Yes,
so
sir.
It's happening at a much advanced rate.
Absolutely.
Huh. The stock, how sort of topsy-turvy would the stock share prices be at this point?
I'm not a financial analyst, so I can't really comment on that. I will say each of these stocks, as well as the category, is highly variable for a lot of good reasons, and because there's a lot of uncertainty right now in the marketplace.
Yeah, very, very volatile.
Very volatile?
Yeah, we had a hostile takeover bid, the first in the sector.
Who of whom?
Aurora made a bid for Canamed. Canamed is the original medical supplier to the government of Canada for 16 years. So they made a bid for them, paper bid, all shares, no cash to start. And
what happened?
Well, the bid has to be open for 105 days. In 105 days of wildly swinging volatility, it was almost guaranteed that the stock price was going to go through the bid. And in which case, the bid's too cheap and it won't succeed.
Right.
Lots of fighting and arguing, typical hostile bid stuff. And then they came to terms on a sweetened bid at about twice the original price. Prices are hard to measure, again, when you're dealing with stocks go up and down, with a bunch of cash, 140 million in cash as well. So it went from a low value all paper bid to a higher value cash and paper bid.
So the shareholders did okay.
So the shareholder, well, it's still not completed yet. The shareholders look to be doing well. The shares of Canamed, yeah.
So Aurora is the new company. It swallowed up the other one.
Will be. It hasn't closed yet.
I see.
They've agreed, and it now has to go out 35 days or so and close.
Gotcha. Mitchell, let me ask you about advertising. How's that going to work?
Great question. We don't know. There are guidelines that have been issued by the government. There has been suggestions by many licensed producers as well as industry associations about what that could be. But the truth of the matter is no one knows until they start producing advertising and it starts being reviewed by the government what actually will be allowed and what won't be allowed. There are certain specifics. You won't be allowed to advertise to minors. You won't be allowed to appear to be attracting non-users to the category. So if you imagine tobacco as the most restrictive, it won't be that.
So I mean, tobacco has a prohibition on advertising.
Correct.
So there will not be a prohibition here.
There will not. You will be allowed to create brands. The question is, what is a brand and how has that manifested itself in terms of the marketplace? But at the same time, you likely won't see beer and alcohol advertising either. It'll be someplace within that continuum.
Brand names. Anybody given that any thought yet?
Within the industry, there's a heck of a lot of thought given to that.
Can you share some ideas that are out there that we may not know?
No, because I don't necessarily know them. They're projects in development right now.
I mean, there's one that's well known, Up Cannabis, which is the Tragically Hip, has associated themselves with New Strike, and their brand is Up Cannabis. So there's one brand, but
you know, it seems, just occurred to me that the beer Bud is a great name for this, but it's taken, I guess. They can't use Bud.
taken for beer.
It's taken for beer, but they could use it for cannabis?
I don't know if anyone's trademarked that. I haven't gone to check.
Snoop Dogg is involved in this, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
What's he doing?
He, I believe, endorsed some of the Canopy brands and served or is serving as a spokesperson.
Huh. Now, I mean, you've said already we're not sure that we're going to see brand identification advertising on television. But of course, social media is the wild, wild west. We anticipate that this will be huge on social media, I guess.
Yes.
Do you see how that sort of works going forward? Who's going to be doing that?
There will likely be, and I'm not giving away any trade secrets when I say this, because this has been publicized in a variety of places. There will likely be key influencers that will sort of direct traffic and direct buzz towards certain products and certain strains. We will probably see that. That's very difficult to control in cyberspace. You will likely see thought leadership, which is very important around the good uses of recreational cannabis, and that is something that the government wants to see, proper education. So there'll be some positive brand elements within this, but it's all evolving, and the plans are evolving based a lot on which provinces are going to market first and at what timeline.
Now, I know you guys are obviously not PR guys. You're in a different part of the economy, but you can imagine a conversation with a very famous person and his or her agent saying, we've been asked to do an ad campaign or endorse on social media this product. Should we do it? How do you imagine that conversation going?
Well, being a lawyer, we'll have to look at the precise rules and tell them whether they should legally be going this way or not. So that remains to be determined.
What do you think?
It's a great strategic question. I'm an ex-brander. If I was a licensed producer and I wanted to pursue that kind of strategy, I'd be very careful in terms of who I would want to speak to and what would the cost of getting them to endorse my product and talk about it. The juice is not always worth the squeeze when it comes to product endorsements, as we've heard with folks like Tiger Woods and so on. At the same time, as a endorser, you know, depending on what my personal brand is like, I'm not sure I would want to be associated with this industry right now, particularly if I'm appealing to younger audiences. The government has been very strict in terms of not directing any promotion sponsorship towards young people under the age of majority, which in Ontario is 19.
Right, but I mean, athletes are of course huge in this area, right? Advertising any number of products.
Right.
If you were an athlete, would you want to be associated with cannabis?
Maybe.
Maybe?
Depends on the athlete, depends on the sport, depends on their value system.
Ross Rebagliati, remember him?
Yeah. Ross Rebagliati, the snowboarder, the Olympic gold medal snowboarder.
Yeah, he has a store in Whistler, Golden Bud or something, selling paraphernalia. So
okay, but Ross is no longer an active participant in pro sports.
But he was huge when he did.
He sure was, because he liked his bud. But could you imagine somebody for the Ottawa Senators or the Maple Leafs, you know, an up-and-coming player endorsing one of these things?
I can imagine someone. I'm not sure if I was Austin Matthews, I'd want to jump in on this, you know, considering my personal brand and, you know, what he represents to young people. But absolutely, and I wouldn't limit it to athletes. There could be actors and a wide variety of people.
Is there enough R&D happening right now, research and development happening in this field, to give us a sense? I mean, people understand with alcohol, you know, you can't blow over 80. Once you're blowing over 80, you're driving illegally. Do we understand similar limits when it comes to cannabis?
You mean smoking and driving and ingesting? There are a number of pilots that I'm aware of that are happening right now in Ontario that's testing various technologies. They get a better sense of your ability to drive under the influence of cannabis.
Saliva tests.
Saliva tests. Yeah. The cultural change that we're about to potentially embark on is really, Well, I wonder, you know, you show up at a dinner party now with a bottle of wine. Are we going to bring hash brownies to future dinner parties? How is this going to work?
Yeah, I think the food and the oils are the most interesting part, because a lot of people are not going to want smoking in their house, right? And the smell. So I think that's the more interesting part.
Have you imagined doing this?
I'm going to have a big pot party when they legalize it and invite all my friends.
Okay, this was the question that I didn't know whether I should ask, but maybe I should. I mean, you guys are obviously in the business of seeing this thing succeed, but when you said I'm going to have a big pot party, I just assumed you were going to be indulging yourself. Is that the case?
I will. You know, when it's legal, I'll invite my friends and we'll have a pot party.
Mitchell, you too?
I'll limit
I'm going to invite Mitchell. So.
Oh, no, thank you. I'll limit my pot party to a potluck party. No, I have a young family at home. I am not a consumer of cannabis, but at the end of the day, it is a legal product, and I know it's consumed by millions of Canadians very responsibly, and I don't have any value judgments for and against. Having said all of that, I don't think we have fully seen the effects of an illegal drug experience moving into legal communities where people interact. So it'll be interesting to see how it evolves. I can't wait.
Well, that evolution is interesting because it's not everything all at once, right?
Correct.
What's the breakdown here?
Well, flower and oils, July 1. Edibles, 2019. Once edibles start to come out, and then you'll have topicals and some of that other stuff, you'll start to see what I believe is sort of a revolution in terms of the usage of this product, by demographic, by usage type, by age, and so on and so forth. So we think of cannabis very often as an individual or a social stimulant, but in reality, it could be something completely different.
Do you know why they chose to stagger the different kinds over numerous years?
I don't. Do you know?
Well, they originally weren't going to allow edibles at all, and I think a lot of pushback.
Right.
I see. So they listened and changed their minds.
Yeah,
Got it.
so.
Simon, let's finish up on this. How do you see this sector maturing once legalization is firmly in place and perhaps the cultural shift we just referred to starts to unfold?
Well, I think of the industry as being in its late adolescent stage right now, and as you witness in the frothy markets. But I think as we see people evolve and strategize within the limits of what the different provincial governments allow, I don't know what the Ontario stores are going to look like. Maybe you have a better sense. Is it going to be like buying liquor in the 50s? I don't think it's going to be like buying liquor today, somewhere in between again. So how much branding, how will branding help, how much? I think we have a lot of learning to do over the next 2-3 years. And then we're going to have things like product problems and recalls, and I mean, they're making food items effectively.
Be a normal product like everything else.
So yeah, you know, so all kinds of things, and who will prove able to grow it well and effectively and make a profit, and who will not. Small companies are going to have a harder time unless they can really get a niche going. As always, it's hard to compete with GM or Ford. So I think it's going to be very interesting, and it's happening at a breakneck pace.
And in terms of the sales of it, you're making the comparison a second ago. Today, of course, all the product is on the shelves for anybody to see and touch and even sample. There's some places in the LCBO, they'll give you a free sample. Back in the 50s and 60s, there was no product in sight. You filled out a little chit, and they kept it all in the back. Do you know whether that's the plan for this?
No, I don't know yet, and I think it's going to vary by province. Alberta sounds a lot more freewheeling than Ontario, but Ontario, they're going to have what, 40 stores in the whole province?
Yeah.
There was a time on Queen Street there were 40 on Queen Street.
Yes,
so there's not going to be enough stores to deal with this. I'm not sure people are really going to want to buy it online, have it delivered to their house, and all this record keeping and names, ID showing. It's going to be interesting I think that, so the black market will continue for some time to come until we have a fully rolled out retail strategy. And you see in the liquor, they're starting to move it into grocery stores.
Yeah.
You know, will that happen a lot faster in the pot sector? Who knows? But eminently possible. That's a big rollout to turn from 40 stores into 2,000 stores.
Indeed. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in, helping us understand this sector a little bit better. Mitchell Osak from Grant Thornton LLP, Simon Romano from Stikeman Elliott LLP. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.